So I just wanted to sort of say that to everybody. I just pressed record, and I just want to, if you feel like you don't want to be seen, feel free to mute your camera. So thanks. All right. Thank you, Susan. Stephanie.
Hi, everyone. I'm Stephanie Correa. I work in Lesley's graduate admissions office, so I will be the person facilitating all of the credentials and the processing and any questions that arise through the admissions process for the master's program.
Great. Thank you, Stephanie. So we're here today to talk to you about a program that Sturbridge has engaged us in designing, and I'm going to let Emily give us a little bit of the background of that.
Great. So for everybody who doesn't know me, I'm Emily Dunnick. I'm the Director of Education here at the Village, and this is a super exciting partnership. So it started a few years ago before the pandemic. There was a meeting with Lesley and a number of districts about basically ways that we can work together to support professionals in the area. So we had talked a lot about options for our staff here at the Village. This has been something that's come up a lot, that getting a master's degree is something that is pretty much required in the museum field when you get to a certain point, but it's a really cost prohibitive process. And then also the same thing for some of the staff who work at Old Sturbridge Academy. So we've been trying for the past few years to get this partnership off the ground, to have a site, a master's program that's based here at the Village. So it would be really easy for people to get to, that would be subsidized by either Old Sturbridge Academy or Old Sturbridge Village. And we talked about a lot of different program models. So if you were part of these discussions years ago, you may have heard about like an integrated arts program. Last summer, we did a staff survey that went out about all the different options. And the most popular option that came out of that was a master's in middle or high school education with certification or teacher licensure. So that's why we're going in that direction. This is a program that is going to be a pilot program for us. So it's brand new, and we're planning on launching it this summer. So I think that's all the background.
Yeah, that's great. We want to find out who you guys are before we start, so we understand like what information you need and don't. And so Katie, I see that you put your name in the chat, but if you would just say out loud who you are, that'd be great.
Yeah, of course. So I'm Katie. I'm the head of education at Cogshell Farm Museum, which is OSV's kind of Rhode Island location. We're sister site now, moving towards a full merger. Mm-hmm. So I kind of move back and forth between the two sites.
Great. I'm I'm glad that you are here. Thank you.
And Katie, you were a classroom teacher, right? That seems relevant.
Yeah, I was a classroom teacher. I have a Massachusetts certification for K-5 and through 12th grade for art.
Mm-hmm. K-5, just regular general classroom, and then an art. Okay.
No, I'm sorry. The both for art.
Oh, okay. So, yep. Great. Thank you. And Emily, the other Emily.
Yeah. So I have been working at Old Sturbridge Village for 19 years, which is hard to believe. But I am really interested in education. I got my bachelor's in sociology and minored in education. It's just life has taken me on different courses. So this is a wonderful opportunity that I'm definitely interested in.
Great. What do you do at the Village?
So I'm the manager of the visitor center.
Mm-hmm. Nice. We had a wonderful event there. The Arts Learning event was at your visitor center this fall.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, awesome. I'm on the board of Arts Learning. So I was like, we had such a lovely time doing our award ceremony. So.
Oh, good.
Yeah. And Jake.
Hi, I'm Jake. I'm one of the interpreters here at OSB. So I got my bachelor's in history, and so I'm just looking to see if going forward in education and a master's degree would be kind of the path I want to go. And it's nice because I can do it while also in partnership with OSB and also working here as well. So it seems like a really cool opportunity, and I'm excited to learn more about it.
Great. Well, let me give you just a quick overview of of some of the context for the delivery and the program, and then I'm going to let Susan talk about the program itself, the middle school, high school program itself. So this is a cohort model, which means that there'll be up to 20 of you who will be attending courses together. The courses that we will be coming for 8 of the 10 courses, instructors will come from Lesley to, I think, the Visitor Education Center, and teaching you there on the weekends. So we work in 8-week terms. Each term, each course takes 8 weeks to complete, and the course meets on Saturday and Sunday from 8 to 5, and then a month later it meets again. So right now, you'd be starting in February. You know, we have some people who are starting this weekend, and then they'll meet again the first weekend in March, and those 2 weekends make a course. So our plan is to start in July of this year, and to complete after it's a 20-month program. So you'd be able to complete by the spring of 2024, if I'm getting my math right there. So what's wonderful about a cohort model is that you're working in concert with all of your colleagues, right? So you're working together. You are able to collaborate. For all of you who work at the village or at the school or the academy, there is this opportunity to really see the work that you're exposed to in practice in your job. We're a very theory to practice based programming at Lesley. That's one of the things that we're really known for, is helping educators understand the ideas that they already know are true about working in community and schools, and understanding the theories behind them, and then also being introduced to new ideas and concepts and skills. It is a master's in middle school and high school, and it will get you an initial license, teaching license. There are some other things we can talk about that are about, you know, what the stages of licensure are. But I want to just pause here for a second and let Susan talk about the program of study that's been chosen based on interest and kind of the context of this particular group.
Hi, everyone. Welcome again. We have a program that is inclusive of middle and high school. And the reason being, you may see some paperwork that still divides it, but recently the state has made the licenses for English language arts, social sciences, and history a 512 license. So you would be certified to teach in middle and high school in whichever your chosen field is. We can parse some differences in history and social science, but it's the state that's behind. On that one, the requirements are exactly the same. So they just haven't gotten around to combining those licenses. So rest assured, a license in one will give you the license for both in that. So our program is a good one. We've talked about a lot of things and changed it recently. We offer first an adolescent development course, which includes all of the recent brain research that folks are doing. Then we have a principles of learning and teaching. And I think it's going to be so wonderful for those of you who work in museums. You have so much to offer. Frankly, our faculty, I would love to teach all of the courses. And then we have an assessment course, a standard assessment course, and a course in diversity, mostly adjusting teaching practices. And we do have a classroom management course, though I'm not so fond of that title, but we do have that. And it is not, it's not a discipline course. It really is a managing course and talking about student engagement mostly. And then sheltered English immersion, which is a state requirement. And then content literacy. We have fantastic literacy folks at Lesley, and I'm happy that all of the humanities folks get to do that one. And then you'll have a methods course. It will either be in English language arts or history social studies. And then we've chosen, or actually you guys chose as the elective, civics and democracy, which is a requirement in our history and social science. But in this case, we've included English language arts because it will be more about advocacy and civic participation than, the standard, here are the 3 institutions of government and checks and balances, though there will be some of that. And then you will do a practicum, and I just want to correct Marianne, that will be a semester long because that's what's required by the state. And there will be a seminar, which is, I like to call it half support group and half getting through the state CAP procedures for certification. And those will be that will be your final semester with us. And if you have any questions, I am happy to answer anything you have.
This is a good time to pause for questions, in fact, before we talk about the application process. Do any of the 3 of you have any questions, or Emily, is there anything you'd like to add?
Well, actually, I had a question that came up last time that I forgot to address at the beginning. Somebody at the last session was wondering if they were not interested in getting licensed to teach, but they were just interested in the master's program. Like, is that an option? They were wondering about the practicum, if they needed to do the practicum, if there's an option to sort of get the, I don't know what that would be, a master's without licensure, maybe?
Yes, we have done that before. And the sooner we know about it, I think the sooner we can make arrangements and make a decision on how that would look.
Okay.
I'm going to defer to Maureen, though, who may know more about it than I do.
We could ask that too as part of the application process, because everybody will, when we talk about how that will work, maybe that's something that could be addressed then too.
Yeah, let's do that. That makes sense to me.
Yeah, because I think that, oh, go ahead, Stephanie.
I was just going to say that for some students that I've worked with in the past across other programs, so I don't want to be too in like the specifics for this program, in knowing that Maureen and Susan would help the advising team basically determine what would have to happen. But it typically would be a replacement of the practicum in the form of other courses. So like elective courses would make up the practicum, which obviously would not then be at the site. So they would have to keep that in mind. I think that's just the one thing I'd want to point out.
That's exactly right. And
there's plenty of options, like there's plenty of things that could happen and that we could facilitate, but I would just want the person to know that it wouldn't be through this cohort that those electives could happen.
Right. That makes sense.
Right. Great. Katie, did you have a question?
Yeah, I mean, that was going to be my biggest question because like I said, I was a classroom teacher. I hold Massachusetts and Rhode Island and actually Virginia certifications for and licensure. And so, being able to student teach is not really a life I was looking forward to going back to, to put delicately.
Yeah. So I do have a question about that, though, for my colleagues on the call, which is that if Katie has a license and this is this could be an add a license opportunity, do we know what that pathway might look like?
Well, it depends on which license you want to add.
Right. Like if you're interested in adding the middle school license, since you have an art education license, this is a different licensure area, but it would require all of those steps with the student teaching.
Okay.
So if in the case that you don't want the license, in addition to replacing the practicum, we also need to just get some paperwork that tells us that we both all acknowledge that you're not pursuing the licensure in middle school. And that's basically what would prompt the conversation with advising to, it's theoretically not the way the program is set up, just because our programs do lead to this teaching license, right? But as Susan and Maureen mentioned, it's definitely been done before. We've had international students do programs who are not looking at licensure at all. There are various reasons why someone might go that route. And so if the content is really exciting to you, then I mean, and all of my colleagues are saying, like nodding their heads that it's possible, I wouldn't see any trouble.
Okay.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
I was just going to say, absolutely. I'm not, you know, I've moved from public education to museum, so I'm not really necessarily looking to go back into a classroom. But, you know, in my role as, you know, education coordinator for our museum, having the classes and the content is something that's been on my radar.
That's great. And we do have, I mean, I'm thinking that, you know, that we do have this integrated teaching through the arts master's program that right now we're running it virtually because of the pandemic. And there are some groups starting. And so there's some courses that might be available that are sort of more in your bailiwick, you know, in terms of your interest as an art teacher and a museum educator, that those courses as alternate courses might be attractive, but again, it wouldn't be part of the program because
I
as
was
you,
thinking another alternate might be the community arts internship.
oh yeah, oh great idea.
You would sign a non-licensure agreement, and then it would be a capstone placement experience, but it wouldn't be in a classroom.
So we have lots, because we have a community arts program. There may be some other courses in that program which could be of interest to the museum educators on the call. We had originally thought we might be able to put a museum course in, and we may still as a part of a badge, which could be taken for credit or for professional development points or for, you know, for fun. But so there are lots of options there. And I think that this idea, Emily, maybe of asking that question on your piece of the application, because it's not something that we can add to ours.
Yeah.
So that kind of brings me to the process that we're going to go through. And so maybe Stephanie, you would speak to that.
Sure. And I have, I mean, instead of sharing my screen, we're a small group, we can just chat it out, and then I can send you the admissions sort of slide that I have that just tells you what the requirements are. But more or less, I mean, if we're looking at a summer term start, I think we're putting the final pieces on the ability to actually submit the application. Like, I don't know if that's actually ready just this second, but it should be very soon.
I'm just going to interrupt you for a quick second. I put a link to a Google folder in the chat, and it does have the 2-part application sort of spelled out, just so that you know that people do have that information.
Great. Awesome. So thank you. And so basically, when the time comes, which should be very soon, to be able to actually submit an application, the following are what we're looking for in the entire admissions file to review you for the graduate program. So it's getting started with this online application that will be specific to this cohort at Old Sturbridge Academy, and it will be an online application that you cannot technically submit until you input the name and email address of 2 of your recommenders. So those 2 recommenders don't actually need to be submitting a letter for you at that moment. They're going to receive a form that they will fill out on your behalf shortly after that point. So basically you'll do that, submit the application, and then in the next steps, be looking at a resume, a statement, and your transcripts from your undergrad. If you have graduate transcripts from anywhere, we will certainly look at those as well and sort of review them as part of the sort of big picture. But that is pretty much the process. If you are pursuing licensure, technically speaking, the MTELs in the subject area are required for admission if your undergraduate major was not the same. So I know, Emily, you mentioned you had like a minor in education and your major was?
Sociology.
Sociology. So this would be a perfect example. And this happens a lot. So I'm not saying this because it's a bad example. It's actually a great example that shows, you know, you have a perfect background to get into education and to do this program, but because the program, as you know, Susan was running through the listing of a lot of the pedagogical courses that are really the primary focus of this program. We want to see the subject matter, that it's something that you have a strong enough grasp of, because there is that one course in the program. Or did we say two, Susan? I'm sorry. I was like paying attention, but sometimes I get in the weeds of what I already know. So forgive me.
There's a methods course, and then there's also a civics and democracy course, but that won't help the English folks too much.
Right. So it's really just about knowing now, and we will be flexible. This is the other thing, like the caveat about the MTEL, you know, in the time of between now and the summer, if taking a subject MTEL seems too daunting for this moment and you want to focus on the application process, we can talk, like we can have a conversation about that. And make basically what would happen is that if it wasn't possible to take the subject MTEL, if someone's background was not the major, then acceptance would be considered on like a conditional basis. And that would sort of be the idea that in the first semester of time that the student would take that subject MTEL and ideally, obviously pass it. And so that's happened in the past. And again, we're pretty flexible with that with all of our students. And I don't see why we wouldn't be that flexible in this space as well. But it's something that's, you know, it's, if you were pursuing licensure, it is very important to start thinking about MTELs because they're required. And so, you know, again, the timeline for right now, you know, I wouldn't want to rush someone to take a test that they weren't ready for. At the same time, you know, it's just something to think about for not too far off in the distance. And we do offer workshops, the subject tests, not as much, but for communication and literacy, we do offer free workshops for our students. So there's other supports in place as well. So all of those materials, once they do come in and are completed, we have a rolling admissions process, and they usually review students within about 2 weeks of the completed time. So, you know, I know everyone really likes to say like, well, what's the deadline? Like, I need to know a deadline. We're pretty, again, at this moment for July, I think that we haven't quite, have we set a deadline for this? Is there anything in writing on a deadline for you all on your end?
So there is, the idea here is that the applications would be first submitted to Old Sturbridge Village.
Yes.
And then they would forward to us the group that they are, that they feel like they can sponsor. So the timeline is to give your application to Sturbridge between now and the middle of March. And then by the end of March, they forward people to us. And then we review them. If I have that right, I feel like I just messed that up though. Did I? Yeah, I think
No,
that's
I think
correct.
that's right. That's what I have on my list too.
Yeah.
And
So then we get it, and then you have 2 weeks. It gets forwarded to us. Then you have 2 weeks in April to submit your application to Lesley, which are the same materials with a few little tweaks that it might be. For instance, for applying to Old Sturbridge Village to be sponsored for this program, you would you need an unofficial transcript, but when you go to Lesley, you'll need an official transcript. Your recommendations can transfer over, your statement about who you are and why you want to do this, and your educational background will all be transferred over. I don't think that Sturbridge is going to require a resume, but we require a resume on our end. So, but it's all very doable. So then you would find out by the beginning of May.
And we, throughout this process at the village end, we're absolutely, this is the second of the 2 information sessions. So we're kind of waiting until this was over, but we absolutely can have conversations with anybody about more information. Or if you're like, is this the right move for me? Like, what do you think? Absolutely. The people who are going to be sort of deciding and recommending people, it's me and Jim and Reese and Lisa at the school. So it's people that most of you know anyway. So I would encourage you, if you think this is something you're interested in, to reach out to one of us so we can talk, you know, more about it. I said this on the last call. I got my master's through a cohort program, not through Lesley, but through another education school. And it was an amazing experience. Like, I fully recommend a program like this. It is really doable, but it is not it's not a small amount of work. So that's something we talked about last time too, like how much work is there between the weekends, and to talk more about that. But it absolutely, you know, reach out to us if you think you're going to apply, and we can talk through it.
So the village is sponsoring the tuition. There are some fees that are part of the program, and those are some of them are registration, materials. We have an electronic portfolio. There's graduation fees, and those are listed on the frequently asked questions. There's an estimate that they come to about $1,400 over the whole 20 months. So that's not like that's due all in one moment. But I do know that maybe Emily, you could speak to the village's approach to sponsoring folks.
Right. So it's likely, we're still working out the details, but we'll have them soon. The way it's going to work is the village will sponsor your tuition. So it's almost like the village is taking out a loan on your behalf, if that makes any sense. And then you, in exchange, have to make a commitment to how long you would stay working at the village. Obviously, we haven't figured out what that would be, but let's say it's 3 years. Don't quote me on that, but for sake of argument, let's say it's 3 years after the program is finished, they have to work at the village. If you left before those 3 years, which would be completely okay, there would be some sort of process to pay back some of the tuition. So it would be like prorated for, I think the way we figure it out would maybe be monthly or something, like every month that you worked at the village would be kind of like subtracting for the total tuition cost. The good thing about this program, and one of the things that makes this program really appealing too, is that even if you were paying for the tuition fully out of pocket, it is much more affordable than a lot of other master's programs. So, you know, I don't want people to be like, it's sort of hard to explain. You wouldn't want to do this program and then plan on leaving immediately after, but we would work that out with you. So before you signed up for this, you would understand what the true cost of the program were, that you were in theory sort of, you know, borrowing from the village, except you're not actually doing that, if that makes sense. But it's kind of like if you do, I don't know, there's lots of teaching programs where tuition is covered if you work in an urban school district for a set amount of time. It's that kind of thing. We want to make sure that we're not going to pay for a master's program and then you get a new job as soon as the master's program is over, because you'll be using those skills, you know, on your work here with us, and hopefully to, you know, further your career either with us or with another organization in the future.
And for those of you who are interested in licensure, I know that the practicum, which is a whole semester, it is a significant amount of time where you're placed in a classroom, that there are some plans about creating flexible work schedules and allowing and accommodating the need that each of you might need if you're doing a practicum.
Yes.
So
we also talked about that with the weekends. So like that might be considered part of your work schedule, the weekends that you're doing the coursework, because that's what's so great about a program like this, with the theory and practice integrated. So you're taking the work that you're learning on those weekends and applying it to your job. A lot of you, what you're doing now. So I think there's an argument to be made. We haven't figured that out yet, but maybe it's one of the weekend days, you know, it counts towards your work week that week. So we'd have to think about that, but we're trying to be really flexible because I think this is something that will benefit everybody.
And the other piece I would say is that we can take up to 20 people. That's the maximum for this particular model. And primarily we're looking first at people from the village and the academy. And then if there are additional spaces, then we're going to be looking at surrounding districts. And those of you who, you know, if you're with the education center, you're at the visitor center, you know that students are coming, the districts are coming from all around the counties, the surrounding counties, to come and visit. And so we'll be looking at some of those feeder districts and seeing if there are educators who might be interested in joining. And looking at one of the reasons this is such an interesting partnership is because we're looking at place-based learning, right? The work that goes on at the academy is about learning in place and really using how to use a museum as an educational landscape across ages. And so it's very much this kind of project-based, inquiry-based learning is very much what we do. So it's a great opportunity for us to learn from you and for you to learn, take some, as I said before, take some things and really learn why they work. So that's a wonderful piece. Any questions that anybody has, or concerns or thoughts? And everyone was able to open the Google Doc, so you can see those pieces. That's great. So it would be wonderful to talk this up to your colleagues. We've had about, I think we had 9 people on the last call, and the 3 of you today, and I understand that some people couldn't make it today. I know that the Academy is expanding to expanding their classrooms, and so there'll be some opportunities to work with the Academy. And if you're looking for a license and you're not going to be placed in the Academy, then it would be a placement in a surrounding district, but there would be the same supports and pieces. I guess the other thing I didn't say is that Lesley does have, for those of you who haven't been in school for a while, has a wonderful advising system that really takes care of students. We have a writing center. We have academic supports for people, because if you haven't been in school for a while, sometimes it's, you're a little tentative at first. And that's something that we're very practiced with. We've been doing cohorts across the country for almost 40 years, or maybe more than 40 years, really. So we know how to support people virtually at a distance, but luckily you're not at too far a distance. So,
and I can speak to that. I just finished my program at Lesley in a cohort, and I had not written a paper in 20 years. And Maureen read some of my papers. So hopefully the Academic Center set me up nicely, because I sent my first handful of papers to the Academic Center for review. And it is a really amazing resource, and there's plenty of resources. And just the idea of, and again, this is for all of you on the call, but for others as well who might be asking, like the idea of sort of balancing work and life is sort of the goal of a cohort like this. And that's very much what my experience was. I mean, again, as Emily mentioned, it's not no work. There's definitely work, but it's something that you can plan for and manage in a very kind of, in a scheduled way, right? So you like kind of know what's ahead of you. So you know how to kind of say like, okay, this summer is when I'm in class, and these are the weekends that I'm not going to book a vacation. It doesn't mean you don't go on vacation. It just means that you might be writing a paper from like a chair not far from the beach or something like that, like I definitely did that. I went to Maine this summer and wrote my last paper from our hotel while the kids went and got ice cream, like stuff like that. You just kind of figure it out. And so it's just it's a great way to balance both. And so I just can't stress that enough to those who are juggling a lot, that it's very much a doable way to earn a master's degree in this way.
I know somebody last time asked like physically where the classes would be, and we're still trying to figure that out. It's likely that they'll either be someplace in Oliver White Tavern or someplace in Old Sturbridge Academy, because they have all the tech in place that would be needed. But you won't be sitting at little kid desks. We'll sit you somewhere comfortable and you'd be on site. But that, just to confirm, this is an in-person program that is based here at the Village.
Yeah, and we also have the capacity to pivot to virtual should any other weather or pandemic related things happen. And an example of that is that we actually are working with one of our elbow partners in Cambridge, and there's a cohort that's meeting this weekend, but we have an ice storm coming Friday into Saturday, and we're going to teach virtually for Saturday, and then they'll meet face-to-face on Sunday, because we're just able to. It's one of the blessings of the pandemic that there are no more snow days. I don't know. Right. we can keep on moving, keep moving forward, and not have to adjust the schedule. So that's helpful.
Well, the village still has snow days because it is like a nightmare here when it snows to get the dirt, all of the dirt roads to be safe for visitors and for staff. So we've had a few. I think we were closed Saturday and Sunday last weekend. Because
Yak tracks aren't historically accurate.
I mean, you need them for sure. If you're a staff person here, some days it is hard work to get snow and ice off of like dirt roads that are full of, you know, ruts and stuff. But
Yeah.
Okay,
so if there aren't any more questions, I'm going to pop my email in the chat, and you all know how to get in touch with Emily. So, if you have any other questions, want to talk more about, adaptations that you can imagine making, wanting to have for yourself, please be in touch. One more thing I would just say is that the kind of work you're doing really can be molded to where your work is. So the kind of observations and applications of things. I mean, obviously, if you're looking at literacy strategies, you're going to need to find some text and some people to work with them on that. But we can be flexible in terms of knowing that we have a lot of museum educators and interpreters and crafts people who are interested. Thank you. And Susan's a good person for programming questions. So great. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. It was wonderful to meet you, and I hope we see you in the program.
Me too. Yeah, please reach out to me if you have any questions about this program. I think it would be a great group of people.
Thank you, Emily.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Bye, Steph.
Bye.
So,
do you want to maybe stop recording so then we can talk
you think
about the
so?
next thing? Although they